Hi, folks. It's April 10th. Um, Hope everyone's doing all right. Uh, it's another beautiful day here, beautiful spring day. Um, so yesterday we read Elizabeth's reaction. We read the letter, and then we read Elizabeth's reaction to the letter. Hi, Alma. Um, and then, of course, Lady Catherine's advice on leaving. So, short chapters today, um, starting with chapter 38. On Saturday morning, Elizabeth and Mr. Collins met for breakfast a few minutes before the others appeared, and he took the opportunity of paying the parting civilities which he deemed indispensably necessary. I know not, Miss Elizabeth, whether Mrs. Collins has yet expressed her sense of your kindness in coming to us, but I am very certain you will not leave this house without receiving her thanks for it. The favour of your company has been felt, I assure you. We know how little there is to tempt anyone to our humble abode. Our plain manner of living, our small rooms and few domestics, and the little we see of the world must make Hunsford extremely dull to a young lady like yourself, but I hope you will believe us grateful for the condescension, and that we have done everything in our power to prevent your spending time unpleasantly. Elizabeth was eager with her thanks and assurances of happiness. She had spent 6 weeks with great enjoyment, and the pleasure of being with Charlotte and the kind attentions she had received must make her feel the obliged. Mr. Collins was gratified, and with a more smiling solemnity replied, It gives me the greatest pleasure to hear that you have passed your time not disagreeably. We have certainly done our best, and most fortunate of having it in our power to introduce you to very superior society, and from our connection with Rosings, the frequent means of varying the humble home scene, I think we may flatter ourselves that your Hunsford visit cannot have been entirely irksome. Our situation with regard to Lady Catherine's family is indeed the sort of extraordinary advantage and blessing which few can boast. You see on what footing we are. You see how continually we are engaged there. In truth, I must acknowledge that, with all the disadvantages of this humble parsonage, I should not think anyone abiding in it an object of compassion while they are sharers of our intimacy at Rosings. Words were insufficient for the elevation of his feelings, and he was obliged to walk about the room, while Elizabeth tried to unite civility and truth in a few short sentences. You may, in fact, carry a very favourable report of us into Hertfordshire, my dear cousin. I flatter myself, at least, that you will be able to do so. Lady Catherine's great attention to Mrs. Collins you have been the daily witness of, and altogether I trust it does not appear that your friend has drawn an unfortunate... But on that point I think it would best to be silent. Only let me assure you, my dear Elizabeth, that I can, from my heart, most cordially wish you equal felicity in marriage. My dear Charlotte and I have but one mind and one way of thinking. There is in everything a most remarkable resemblance of character and ideas between us. We seem to have been designed for each other. Elizabeth could safely say it was with great happiness were that the case, and with equal sincerity could add that she firmly believed and rejoiced in his domestic comforts. She was not sorry, however, to have the recital of them interrupted by the entrance of the lady from whom they sprung. Poor Charlotte! It was melancholy to leave her to such society, but she had chosen it with her eyes open, and though evidently regretting that her visitors were to go, she did not seem to ask for compassion. Her home and her housekeeping, her parish and her poultry, and all their dependent concerns, had not yet lost their charms. At length the chaise arrived, and the trunks were fastened on, the parcels placed within, and was pronounced to be ready. After an affectionate parting between the friends, Elizabeth was attended to the carriage by Mr. Collins, and as they walked down the garden, he was commissioning her with all his best respects to her family, not forgetting his thanks for the kindness he had received at Longbourn in the winter, and his compliments to Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, though unknown. He then handed her in, Maria followed, and the door was on the point of being closed, when he suddenly reminded them, with some consternation, that they had hitherto forgotten to leave any message for the ladies of Rosings. "But," he added, "you will of course wish to have your humble respects delivered to them, with your grateful thanks for their kindness to you while you have been here." Elizabeth made no objection. The door was allowed to be shut, and the carriage drove off. "Good gracious!" cried Maria, after a few moments' silence. "It seems but a day or two since we first came, and yet how many things have happened!" "A great many indeed," said her companion with a sigh. "We have dined 9 times at Rosings, besides drinking tea there twice. How much I have to tell!" Elizabeth privately added, "How much I shall have to conceal." Their journey was performed without much conversation or any alarm, and within 4 hours of their leaving Hunsford they reached Mr. Gardiner's house, where they were to remain a few days. Jane looked well, and Elizabeth had the opportunity of studying her spirits amidst the various engagements from the kindness of their aunt had reserved for them. But Jane was to go home with her, and at Longbourn there would be leisure enough for observation. It was not without an effort, meanwhile, that she could wait for Longbourn even before she told her sister of Mr. Darcy's proposal. To know that she had the power of revealing what would exceedingly astonish Jane, and must, at the same time, so highly gratify whatever of her own vanity she had not yet been able to reason away, was such a temptation to openness as nothing could have conquered but the state of indecision in which she remained, as to the extent of what she should communicate, and her fear, if she once entered on the subject, of being hurried away into repeating something of Bingley, which might only grieve her sister. 39. It was the second week in May in which the 3 young ladies set off together from Great Church Street for the town of in Hertfordshire, and as they drove near the appointed inn where Mr. Bennet's carriage was to meet them, they quickly perceived, in token of the coachman's punctuality, both Kitty and Lydia looking out of a dining-room upstairs. These 2 girls had been above an hour in the place, happily employed in visiting an opposite milliner, watching the sentinel on guard, and dressing a salad and cucumber. After welcoming their sisters, they triumphantly displayed a table set with such cold meats as an inn-lauder could usually afford, exclaiming, "Is it not nice? Is it not an agreeable surprise?" "And we have meant to treat you all," added Lydia, "but you must lend us the money, for we have spent ours at the shop out there." Then, showing her purchases, "Look here, I have bought this bonnet. I do not think it very pretty, but I thought I might as well buy it as not. I shall pull it to pieces as soon as I get home, and see if I can make it up better." And when the sisters abused it as ugly, she added with perfect unconcern, "Oh, but there were 2 or 3 much uglier in the shop, and when I have bought some prettier coloured satin to trim it with fresh, I think it will be tolerable. Besides, it will not signify what anyone wears this summer. After all, the Shire have left Meryton, and they are going in a fortnight." "Are they indeed?" cried Elizabeth, with great satisfaction. "They are going to be encamped near Brighton, and I do so want Papa to take us all there for the summer. It would be such a delicious scheme. I dare say I would hardly cost anything at all. Mamma would like to go too, of all things. Only think what a miserable summer else we shall have." "Yes," thought Elizabeth, "that would be a delightful scheme indeed, and completely do for us at once. Good heaven, Brighton and a whole campful of soldiers to us who have been already overset by one poor regiment of militia, and the monthly balls of Meryton." "Now I have got some news for you," said Lydia, as they sat down to table. "What do you think? It is excellent news, capital news, and about a certain person that we like." Jane and Elizabeth looked at each other, and the waiter was told he need not stay. Lydia laughed and said, "Ay, that is just like your formality and discretion. You thought the waiter must not hear, as if he cared. I dare say he often hears worse things said than I am going to say. But he is an ugly fellow. I am glad he is gone. I never saw such a long chin in my life. Well, now for my news. It is about dear Wickham. Too good for the waiter now, is it not? There is no danger of Wickham's marrying Mary King. There, that's for you. She has gone down to her uncle at Liverpool, gone to stay. Wickham is safe." "And Mary King is safe," said Elizabeth, "safe from a connection imprudent as to fortune." "She's a great fool for going away if she liked him." "But I hope there is not a strong attachment on either side," said Jane. "I'm sure there is not on his. I will answer for he never cared care 3 straws about her. Who could about such a nasty little freckled thing?" Elizabeth was shocked to think that, however incapable of expression herself, the coarseness of the sentiment was little other than her own breast had formerly harbored and fancied liberal. As soon as all had ate, and the elder ones paid, the carriage was ordered, and after some contrivance, the whole party, with all their boxes, work-bags, and parcels, and the unwelcome addition of Kitty and Lydia's purchases, were seated in it. "How nice we are all crammed in," cried Lydia. "I'm glad I brought my bonnet, for it is only for the fun of having another bandbox. Well, now let us be quite comfortable and snug, and talk and laugh all the way home. And in the first place, let me hear what has happened to you all since you went away. Have you seen any pleasant men? Have you had any flirting? I was in great hopes that one of you would have got a husband before you came back. Jane will be quite an old maid soon, I declare. She is almost 23. Lord, how ashamed I should be of not having married before 23. My Aunt Phillips wants you so to get husbands, you can't think. She said Lizzie had better have taken Mr. Collins. But I do not think there would have been any fun in it. Lord, how I should have liked to be married before any of you. And then I would chaperone you all about all the balls. Dear me, we had such a good piece of fun the other day at Colonel Foster's. Kitty and me were to spend the day there, and Mrs. Foster promised to have such a little dance in the evening. Mrs. Forster and me are such friends. She has asked the 2 Harringtons to come, but Harriet was ill, and so Pen was forced to come by herself. And then what do you think we did? We dressed up as Chamberlain in women's clothing, on purpose to pass for a lady. Think only what fun! Not a soul knew of it but Colonel and Mrs. Foster, and Kitty and me, except my aunt, who was forced to borrow one of her gowns. But you cannot imagine how well he looked. Well, when Denny and Wickham and Pratt and 2 or 3 more of the men came in, they did not know him in the least. Lord, how I laughed, and so did Mrs. Foster. I thought she should have died, and that made the men suspect something, and then they soon found out what was the matter. With such kind of histories of the parties and good jokes did Lydia, assisted by Kitty's hints and additions, endeavour to amuse her companions all the way to Longbourn. Elizabeth listened as little as she could, but there was no escaping the frequent mention of Wickham's name. Dun, dun, dun. Their reception at home was most kind. Mrs. Bennet rejoiced to see Jane in undiminished beauty, and more than once during dinner did Mr. Bennet say voluntarily to Elizabeth that, "I'm glad you're come back, Elizabeth." Their party in the dining-room was large, for almost all of the Lucases came to meet Maria and hear the news, and various were the subjects which occupied them. Lady Lucas was inquiring of Maria across the table after the welfare and poultry of her eldest daughter. Mrs. Bennet was doubly engaged on the one hand with collecting an account of the present fashions from Jane, who sat some way below her, and on the other retailing them all to the younger Miss Lucases and Lydia, in a voice rather louder than any other person's, was enumerating the various pleasures of the morning to anybody who would hear her. "Oh, Mary," said she, "I wish you could have gone with us, for we had such fun, and we all went along. Kitty and me drew up all the blinds, and pretended that there was nobody in the coach, and I should have gone so all the way, if Kitty had not been sick. And when we got to the George, I do not think we behaved very handsomely, for we treated the other 3 with the nicest cold luncheon in the world, and if you would have gone, we would have treated you too. And then when we came away from it it was such fun. We thought we should never have gotten into the coach. I was ready to die of laughter. But then we were so merry all the way home. We talked and laughed so loud, and anybody might have heard us for 10 miles off. To this Mary very gravely replied, "Far be it from me, my dear sister, to depreciate such pleasures. They would doubtless be congenial with the generality of female minds, but I confess they would have no charms for me. I should infinitely prefer a book." But of this answer Lydia heard not a word. She seldom listened to anybody for more than half a minute, and never attended to Mary at all. In the afternoon Lydia was urgent with the rest of the girls to walk to Meryton and see how everybody went on, but Elizabeth was steadily opposed the scheme. It should not be said that the Miss Bennets could not be home half a day before they were in pursuit of the officers. There was another reason for her opposition. She dreaded seeing Wickham again, and resolved to avoid it as long as possible. The comfort to her of the regiment's approaching removal was indeed beyond expression. In a fortnight they were to go, and once gone, she hoped there could be nothing more to plague her on that account. She had not been many hours at home before she found that the Brighton scheme, of which Lydia had given them a hint at the inn, was under frequent discussion between her parents. Elizabeth saw directly that her father had not the slightest intention of yielding, but his answers were at the same time so vague and equivocal that her mother, though often disheartened, never yet despaired of succeeding at last. Elizabeth's impatience to acquaint Jane with what had happened could no longer be overcome. At length resolving to express every particular in which her sister was concerned, and preparing her to be surprised, she related to her the next morning the chief of the scene between Darcy and herself. Miss Bennet's astonishment was soon lessened by the strong sisterly partiality which made any admiration of Elizabeth appear perfectly natural. And all surprise was shortly lost in other feelings. She was sorry that Mr. Darcy should have delivered his sentiments in a manner so little suited to recommend them. But still more she was grieved for the unhappiness which her sister's refusal must have given him. He was so sure of succeeding was wrong, said she, and certainly ought not to have appeared, but consider how much it must increase his disappointment. Indeed, replied Elizabeth, I am heartily sorry for him, but he has other feelings which will probably drive away some of his regard for me. You do not blame me, however, for refusing him. Blame you? Oh, no. But you blame me for having spoken so warmly of Wickham. No, I do not know that you were so wrong in saying what you did. But you will know when I have told you what happened the very next day. And then she spoke of the letter, repeating the whole of its contents as far as they concerned George Wickham. What a stroke this was for poor Jane, who would willingly have gone through the world believing that so much wickedness existed, never believing that so much wickedness existed in the whole race of mankind, as we here collected in one individual. Nor was Darcy's vindication, though grateful to her feelings, capable of consoling her for such discovery. Most earnestly did she labor to prove the probability of error, and seek to clear one without involving the other. This will not do, said Elizabeth. You will never be able to make both of them good for anything. Take your choice, but you must be satisfied with either one. There is but such a quantity of merit between them, just enough to make one good sort of man. And of late it has been shifting about pretty much. For my part, I am inclined to believe it all Mr. Darcy's. But you shall do as you choose. It was some time, however, before a smile could be extorted from Jane. I do not know when I have been more shocked, said she. Wickham is so very bad. It is almost past belief. And poor Mr. Darcy! Dear Lizzie, only consider what he must have suffered. Such a disappointment, and with the knowledge of your ill opinion too, and having to relate such a thing of his sister. It is really too distressing. I am sure you must feel it so. Oh no, my regret and compassion are all done away by seeing you so full of both. I know you will do him such ample justice that I am growing every moment more unconcerned and indifferent. Your profusion makes me savings, and if you lament over him much longer, my heart will be as light as a feather. Poor Wickham! There is such an expression of goodness in his countenance, such an openness and gentleness in his nature, in his manner. There is certainly some great mismanagement in the education of those two men. One has got all the goodness, and the other all the appearance of it. I never thought Mr. Darcy was so deficient in the appearance of it as you used to do. And yet I meant him to be uncommonly clever in taking so decided a dislike to him, without any reason. It is such a spur to one's genius, such an opening for wit, to have dislike of that kind. One may continuously abuse without saying anything just, but one cannot be always laughing at a man without now and then stumbling on something witty. Lizzie, when you first read the letter, I'm sure you could not treat the matter as lightly as you do now. Indeed, I could not. I was uncomfortable enough. I was very uncomfortable, I may say unhappy. And with no one to speak to of what I felt. No, Jane. To comfort me and say that I have not been so very weak and vain and nonsensical as I know I am. Oh, how I wanted you! How unfortunate that you should have used such very strong expressions in speaking of Wickham to Mr. Darcy, for now they do appear wholly undeserved. Certainly, but the misfortune of speaking with bitterness is the most natural consequence of the prejudice I had been encouraging. There is one point on which I want your advice. I want to be told whether I ought or ought not to make our acquaintances in general understand Wickham's character. Miss Bennet paused a little and then replied, Surely there can be no occasion for exposing him so dreadfully. What is your own opinion? That it ought not to be attempted. Mr. Darcy has not authorized me to make his communication public. On the contrary, every particular relative to his sister, which meant to be kept as much as possible to myself, and if I endeavour to undeceive people as the rest of his conduct, who will believe me? The general prejudice against Mr. Darcy is so violent that it would be the death of half the good people in Meryton to attempt to place him in an amiable light. I am not equal to it. Wickham will soon be gone, and therefore it will not signify to anybody here what he really is. Some time hence it will all be found out, and then we may laugh at their stupidity in not knowing about it. But at present I will say nothing of it. You are quite right. To have his errors made public might ruin him forever. He is now perhaps sorry for what he has done, and anxious to re-establish his character. We must not make him desperate. The tumult of Elizabeth's mind was allayed by this conversation. She had got rid of 2 of the secrets which had weighed on her for a fortnight, and was certain of a willing listener in Jane whenever she might wish to talk of either. But there was still something lurking behind, of which prudence forbade the disclosure. She dared not relate the other half of Mr. Darcy's letter, nor explain to her sister how sincerely she had been valued by his friend. Here was knowledge in which no one could partake, and she was sensible that nothing less than a perfect understanding between the parties could justify in throwing off this last encumbrance of a mystery. And then, said she, if that very improbable event should ever take place, I will merely be able to tell what Bingley may tell in a much more agreeable manner himself. The liberty of communication cannot be mine till it has lost all its value. She was now, on being settled at home, at leisure to observe the real state of her sister's spirits. Jane was not happy. She still cherished a very tender affection for Bingley, having never even fancied herself in love before. Her regard had all the warmth of first attachment, and from her age and disposition, greater steadiness than first attachments often boast. And so fervently did she value his resemblance and prefer him to every other man, that all her good sense and all her attention to the feelings of her friend were requisite to check the indulgence of those regrets, which must have been injurious to her own health and their tranquillity. Well, Lizzie, said Mrs. Bennet one day, what is your opinion now of this sad business of Jane's? For my part, I am determined never to speak of it to anybody. I told my sister Phillips so the other day, but I cannot find out that Jane saw anything of him in London. Well, he is a very undeserving young man, and I do not suppose there is the least chance in the world of her getting him now. There is no talk of him coming to Netherfield again in the summer, and I have inquired of everybody, too, who is likely to know. I do not believe they will ever live at Netherfield any more. Oh well, it is just as he chooses. Nobody wants him to come. Though I shall always say that he used my daughter extremely ill. And if I were her, I would not have put up with it. Well, my comfort is, I am sure Jane will die of a broken heart, and then he will be sorry for what he has done. But as Elizabeth could not receive comfort from any such expectation, she made no answer. Well, Lizzie, continued her mother soon afterwards, and so the Collinses live quite comfortably, do they? Well, well, I can only hope it will last. What sort of table do they keep? Charlotte is an excellent manager, I dare say. If she is half as sharp as her mother, she is saving enough. There is nothing extravagant in their housekeeping, I dare say. No, nothing at all. A great deal of good management depends on it. Yes, yes, they will take care not to outrun their income. They will never be distressed for money. How much good may it do them? And I suppose they often talk of having Longbourn when your father is dead. They look upon it as quite their own, I dare say, whenever that happens. It is a subject of which they could not mention before me. It's a subject, no, it would be strange if they had, but I make no doubt they often talk of it between themselves. Well, if they can be easy with an estate that is not lawfully their own, so much the better. I should be ashamed of having one that is only entailed on me. There we are. And chapter 41 will start tomorrow, and then we'll be taking another break for the weekend. Oh, Mrs. Bennet. As you say, Julia, Mrs. Bennet. Oh, yes, it's a comfort to think she will die of a broken heart. What did they usually die from then? Childbirth, cholera. Jane Austen, I believe, the thought is she died of Addison's disease. Yes. And in I think she was about 40. Which, yeah. Imagine how much more she could have written, but yeah. Well, that is it for today. I will be back, as I say, tomorrow with the next 3 chapters, and we will continue. So everyone have a great day.